In December 1944, during the Ardennes offensive that began on the 16th, this Opel Olympia was standing somewhere in the Ardennes, until, after the end of the war, it was taken as war booty across the Atlantic. Today, you can find it about 8,000 kilometers away, in a city where you would least expect it, namely in New Orleans, the big city in the south of the United States of America. But why is it there? More on that in a moment. With around 380,000 inhabitants, New Orleans is the largest city in the state of Louisiana. It is known for its tolerance, the lavish buildings, some of which date back to the late 18th century, the well-seasoned and tasty Cajun dishes, and the music groups you can find everywhere. The city on the American Gulf Coast is, of course, also known for its famous French Quarter, dating back to the time from the 16th to the 19th century when it was a French colony. In this district, which in the evening hours is somewhat reminiscent of Hamburg's Reeperbahn or Mallorca's Ballermann, tourists can already find during the day everything that makes a tourist's heart happy. But New Orleans is also surrounded by swamp, the marshland that you can explore with specially built boats, either at a snail's pace or full speed ahead. The plants hanging down from the trees are called Spanish moss, which gives this area its characteristic appearance. And if you're lucky, you might also see a Mississippi alligator lying in wait, completely motionless. But these prehistoric creatures are not only found in the swamp, but also in wetlands close to the city, where they hope to catch their favorite meal, an unsuspecting crane. But if you want to experience something out of the ordinary when visiting this interesting city, you should walk a few hundred meters away from the hustle and bustle to Magazine Street, where the National World War II Museum of the United States is housed in impressive buildings. Of course, like everything in America, especially in the South, it's big. Here, for example, is a group of pilots preparing for their mission. As I said, this is the World War II Museum. What you immediately notice, of course, is that there is no indoctrination here, like in certain museums in Germany, but only information is provided. That's how museums should be in principle. Because indoctrination doesn't help anyone, it just scares people away. Time would not be enough to show everything that is exhibited here in large dioramas or displayed on the widescreen videos. All the tanks, cannons, howitzers, weapons of every kind in the display cases, uniforms, vehicles, and airplanes, including this German Messerschmitt Bf 109, and all the while, always accompanied by the disturbing sounds of war. As a greeting, one first sees a Tiger tank with an 88 in the best condition, which consequently is pointed upwards at one of those twin-engine bombers that had been deployed. I'll just focus on showing the situation here for now. Very heavy public traffic. So it's not really recommended to film into the crowd so that nobody complains. Anne says, now Heinz is even showing me here in Louisiana with my girlfriend. In this display case, all the pistols, rifles, and weapons used by the Wehrmacht are exhibited. I wouldn't be surprised if most of them were still functional today. I just mentioned the realistic-looking large dioramas of various battlefields, which are meant to give visitors a better sense of the situations that German, Japanese, or American soldiers found themselves in. In addition, two so-called streets illuminate, in chronological order, the phases that were important not only for the American armed forces. One street leads to Tokyo and covers the period from the Japanese air raid on the American naval base Pearl Harbor on the Hawaiian island of Oahu, the massive aircraft carrier sea battles in the Pacific and the so-called island hopping up to the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the surrender of the Japanese Empire, which was allied with Germany. A large diorama, supported by videos, also depicts a scene of jungle combat on some island. Other videos show footage from the naval battles and attacks by Japanese kamikaze pilots on the American fleet. But for the German visitor, of course, the National World War II Museum, which mainly depicts the fight against Germany in the European theater of war, is much more interesting, where they also had to endure some very bitter setbacks. And this here is called The Road to Berlin. On the road to Berlin, you first encounter visual representations of the protagonists from the different warring parties. It is supported by vividly presented videos that show those interested in military history the events leading up to the beginning of World War II. After that, one enters a scene that shows the Allied fight against the Axis powers Germany and Italy in North Africa, lasting from November 1942 until May 1943. The focus within it is the Battle of Kasserine Pass from the 19th to the 22nd of February 1943. The first major clash of American tank units with German units, in which the American boys were not only defeated, but also fled in combat panic by the thousands. Here, these facts are not sugar-coated or reinterpreted as a victory, but are addressed very clearly. The reasons for this fiasco included, among other things, military arrogance, poor training, and serious leadership mistakes. The next presentation describes the preparations and procedures of the invasion of Sicily in July and August 1943. Operation Husky, which was then followed by the Allied Italian campaign that lasted until the end of the war. My video deals with an excerpt from it. The battle at Cisterna from the 30th of January to the 2nd of February 1944 between German paratroopers and American Rangers, in which the Rangers had suffered considerable losses. A special place is taken by the air war against German cities and industrial facilities. It also addresses some American bombing raids that, due to the German anti-aircraft defense, and especially the fighter force, had led to considerable losses. The next element shown is the successful invasion against the Atlantic Wall in Normandy on June 6, 1944. Here, too, large video maps are used to vividly convey the events to later generations. As I have this video about the Atlantic Wall. The closer the American army approached the German border in the autumn of 1944, the more detailed the descriptions in the museum now become. Videos show the advance on Germany, the airborne battle of Nijmegen lost by the Allies, for which I made this video. The battles at the Siegfried Line, and finally the bloody battle in the Hürtgen Forest from September 19th to December 6th, 1944. With tens of thousands of American casualties, during which the top leadership of the American units on the Western Front acted with complete incompetence. If you want to learn more about this, I recommend this video. Impressive is the large diorama with a situation from the Ardennes offensive, which I have already mentioned, from December 1944, accompanied from the radio communications of the American soldiers who were completely surprised by the German attack, who were overrun and fled during the first assault by the German units. until the Allied reserves that were brought in were able to stabilize the defensive line, and shortly after, the superior air forces pushed back the already exhausted Wehrmacht. And finally, the surrender of Germany with images of destroyed cities. I have already mentioned that this museum is far from trying to confuse people with indoctrination or crude propaganda. On the contrary, it tries to remain fair with its descriptions and the selection of images, and even shows seemingly minor details, such as what the American soldier carried for his daily well-being, from powder for sore feet, from marching to shaving foam in a can. The museum also commemorates 4 fallen clergymen, a Catholic priest, a Jewish rabbi, and 2 Protestant ministers. So, if you want to experience a museum where you aren't lectured at every corner, New Orleans is the right place for you. The city in Louisiana, known for its tolerance, which you can also experience again and again in the halls of the impressive American World War Museum,